Hello, my name is Owen. Today I'll be doing a quick review of Robin Hobb's Royal Assassin. What I'm going to do is give a brief overview of the book's about, tell you the things that I liked, and tell you the things that I didn't like, jumping straight into it. As for the overview, it's the sequel to Assassin's Apprentice. It's a fantasy novel, follows the, spoiler alert, Royal Assassin, Fitz chivalry. So it's a continuation of the first book. If you haven't read the first book, don't read this book. What are you doing? If you haven't read the first one, you already know what it's about. It's just a continuation, right? I'm just going to say it and get off my chest right off the bat. This might be my new favorite series, or at least very high up there in terms of fantasy series. I know I only read 2 of the 3 books, but I really liked Assassin's Apprentice. Like, really liked it. And I liked Royal Assassin so much better, just to get it off the bat. And I was reading like some like discourse like over this book and then go over this series, and people are saying like, oh, it's like a slow burn. It's the definition of a slow burn, right? Not much happens. It's really just a character piece. I quite frankly disagree. I think it is a character piece, absolutely. However, slow burn, I was gripped personally the entire time. Is it a longer book? Yeah, I think it's around like 650 pages, or it was on my Kindle. And the interesting thing about this book, and maybe this is why people call it a slow burn, is in terms of like events, not extremely much happens. Like, I think if you had the events of the first book, Assassin's Apprentice, and the events of this book, in a normal, like, fast-paced fantasy, I guess, it would be like one book, right? With the Red Ship Raiders, and they're doing it, and Fitz has to become a warrior in order to defeat them. As he trains to become the assassin, he gets putting on quests, but Prince Regal is up to no good. Yeah, I could see that being like one like fast-paced fantasy book, but it's really like dragged out in terms of space of events. Spoiler alert for the end of the first book. They introduced the concept of the Red Ship Raiders. I mean, if you have, why are you watching the review for a second if you haven't read the first one? But anyway, it's they like the Red Ship Raiders begin attacking, and at the end of that book, that's not been resolved. You don't know what they're doing. You don't know what their motives are, and it's very similar in this book in terms of the information that's getting revealed. So it's the main plot, which you'd think would be like the driving force of like Fitz needs to stop these raiders, he needs to save the kingdom, stuff like that. It really takes a backseat the whole time for just like the machinations of like the plot of the castle, the politics, Fitz's romantic relationships with Molly, and his relationship with Burrich, and his struggling with like his powers. And it's just so, and I understand why people say it's slow paced. It's because it's just dealing with these events, and it's reiterating like the same problems, dragging them out over weeks and months. It doesn't take quite as big of a time jump as the first one. I think the first one started when he was 6 and he was like 14. And I think he's probably around like 16, 17 in this book. I kind of lost a little bit of track, or by the end at least. But Fitz, this is the book where he becomes a man, and it was incredible. Like, he's still a young kid. I'm going to sneeze. I defeated it. That's how cool I am. I would have edited it out if I did sneeze, but I defeated it. Don't worry about it. But this one, I think I liked it even better because we didn't have to deal with like Fitz being so inactive, because like as a 6-year-old, there's only so much like agency you could have over your own decisions and your own story. But at this point, Fitz is not only becoming like smarter, he's becoming like physically stronger, he's becoming more capable. And I will say though, just jumping into the one thing that I had an issue with, because it's so slight, and I just want to get out of the way before I continue gushing about this book, is because of the slow pace of this book. Like I said, like he has more agency than the first book, but a lot of things just happen to Fitz, and he has to deal with them, and he doesn't have a lot of control over the situation, which makes perfect sense in the context of the story because he's the assassin's apprentice, right? Then he's the royal assassin, but he can't kill anybody he wants, or at least he's advised not to. And he doesn't really have that much political power. He doesn't really have that much influence to really make any big decisions on his own. So contrary to a lot of like stories where your protagonist should be driving like his decisions, or their decisions should be driving the next plot points of the story, it's a lot of Fitz mulling over issues, trying to fix his relationship with Molly, and then boom, a big event happens that he had nothing to do with, or he had no possible way for him to prevent it. So it's kind of just him dealing with events as they pass, which is a unique story structure. And I do hope that in future books, like as like Fitz grows into like a properly like adult, he'll have a little bit more agency, he'll have a little bit more power to like make decisions that influence like the greater plot. Because right now, like he influences obviously like his personal relationships and his day-to-day like tasks, but like the big macro events, he really has no control over, which Sometimes I wish he had more control, but I just think it's very interesting because I'm in a couple writing classes and it's always like your protagonist should be driving the story. And this is not an example of that, and yet it's working. So I think it's interesting. It just shows that story rules are meant to be broken. And I think that's another reason why I like it so much. But I do want Fitz to be able to start taking action on some of these macro things, because one of the most frustrating things, and it's not like a complaint in the book because Fitz has the same frustration as me, which means something is going right, is that he is caught between his duty and like what he knows would be so much better. Like there's a certain character, and if you read the first book, you know who he is. He's a dastardly little fellow who just causes so much problems. And if Fitz could just, you know what I mean? Everything would be fine. But the kings and other princes, they're like, listen, you can't do that. You're going to do it our way. And then they provide no information. They do not reach out to Fitz. Chade, this book, really making me a little irked there, Chade. I love you. I love you to death. The first book, you were like one of the kindest mentors because Birch was all over the place. Birch in this book, like, I loved him in this book. However, I'll get to that. Chade, though, the fact that you don't visit Fitz and he's going through all this junk, listen, he redeemed himself just because he's still a nice guy. He was busy with other stuff, but like, you got to keep my man Fitz in the loop, because that poor kid was just waiting. Like, he had so many issues and he was just waiting for somebody to like just tell about it so they could do something about it. And then they finally meet up and they're like, yeah, just do nothing about it. Like, it's poor torture for this kid, because it's not like in the first book he definitely made some like rash errors, but I think this one, like, Fitz is just like in the right every time, which like in the first book, I think it's really refreshing to have a protagonist that competent, but he's just put in such a horrible position in terms of like his obligations that he just always loses. Poor Fitz always gets beat up. And I also saw some complaints in other people's reviews about like the romance. They didn't think that Molly and Fitz were a good couple. I completely disagree. I really resonate with Molly's like feelings towards Fitz. I think it's completely justified how she feels, the way that she does. With Fitz clearly has divided loyalties. Like, he's like such a big love for her, but he also has loyalty to the king. But because we're in Fitz's head, we know that he does truly love her. But I understand completely why Molly's like, even if that's true, like I can't wait around, because you'll always have to serve the king first. And it makes complete sense. And I'll be interested to see how that develops, if it develops at all, because Fitz obviously still wants to win her back. And I hope for his sake, he finally gets a W and he does win her back. But I really like that romance. I think Molly's a fascinating character, and I think she's a realistic character. And I really like their romance. Going back to the other major characters, Verity. I wish we spent a little bit more time with Verity, because he was there for like the first big portion of the book, and I love Verity. I think he's a great mentor figure to Fitz, but you know, he had his own thing going on. Hopefully you see more of him. Burrich in the first book, their relationship, or Fitz and Burrich's relationship, was just so complex and back and forth, and I got so mad at Burrich for like the way that he treated Fitz, because when he like uses the wit. But this one, I felt like Burrich took a step in the right direction, some character growth. He's a little bit more supporting of Fitz. He's treating him like an equal rather than like his assistant, and he's letting him do his own thing, which is a great move. So good for you, Burrich. The other thing I really, really liked about this book, and this is the last major thing, because I just love this book and I could just talk about it forever, but it'd be boring if I did. The other major thing I really liked about this book is how it expanded on the magic system. The first book, we were introduced to like what the wit is and like why Burrich doesn't like it, but Fitz can do it. He can like bond with animals, ? This was obviously a huge part of this book, because we were introduced to the character of Night Eyes, the wolf, and Fitz and him get like a connection. And it's just, I loved coupling that with the skill, which also was just like vaguely hinted on. I wasn't really exactly sure how it works. It's like you could like tell people what to do when they have to listen, or you could like read their mind, and it's a little bit of both, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. It's deeply expanded as Fitz begins to learn and understand these plot powers, and as he uses them more and more, I think it's a really, really fun concept, because it's all like mental like it's like there's like scenes where there's people, like two people like having a battle, but like in reality, when I picture it, it's just literally just them standing there like, you know what I mean? And it's so interesting, and I really like it. And I really like that it leads to scenarios where Fitz is alone in the situation, but he has the voice of a wolf in his head saying like, yo, kill this man. He's a danger to you, to the pack. And you also have like Verity in his head being like, wise caution is the, you know, like literally it's just the angels on Fitz's, angel and demon on Fitz's shoulders, because he has like so many people like in his head, and he's just like, I would just like to have my own brain for a little bit. but he has all these voices in his head, and it's so interesting and it's so fascinating. I've never read anything like it before, and I'm so much enjoying it. I'm already reading the third book in the trilogy. This is a great series. I can't believe I waited this long to read it. That's all I got for you guys. If you want to see the next review, I'm going to expand. When I finish the trilogy, I'm going to do another video on that too. If you want to see that, be sure to like and subscribe. It helps a lot. Other than that, I'll see you later.